When mentioning Rolex's history, we always think of a few icons. The Submariner when thinking of the most iconic dive watch, for example. However, there is one watch that is quite controversial. That is the Rolex Explorer. So, when an enthusiast thinks of the Rolex Explorer, the first thing that comes to mind is the watch that accommodated Sir Edmund Hillary on his expedition to Mount Everest. So, the reason this topic is very controversial is because the Explorer has been somewhat separated from the Oyster Perpetual line. Yet the original watch that Hillary wore was actually an Oyster Perpetual and a Smith's watch. However, with that being said, the Rolex Explorer is actually a result of 30 years on research and development, which in a sense makes the Oyster Perpetual a predecessor of the Explorer. Since the 1930s, Rolex has been sending watches on Himalayan expeditions to create the best mountaineer's tool watch, a watch that could survive extreme conditions while still keeping perfect time, or as good of time as they could. Taking a look at the modern Oyster Perpetual 34mm, it doesn't really matter the specific reference of the modern 34mm because all of them are the same with just different dial variations and sizes. In fact, the 34, 36, and 39mm use the exact same movement, the caliber 3130. This is the exact same movement used in the Submariner 114060, a COSC certified movement supposedly accurate to plus or minus 2 seconds a day, and the Oyster Perpetual also utilizes the Rolex 904 Oyster steel. The case finishing is actually quite exceptional as we'd expect from a Rolex. A mixture of polished and brushed finishing and everything feels extremely solid. The dial has a beautiful sunburst dial to it, and this specific model has the 3, 6, and 9 layout as the Explorer. The rest of the indices have a light purple colored lume which actually looks really beautiful in the metal. The dial also has an applied logo which actually isn't in my Submariner, and I really appreciate that. Sometimes I think, why doesn't the Submariner have that? But then again, it matches the applied 3, 6, and 9 on this Oyster Perpetual. Now the clasp is extremely solid even though it doesn't have the glide lock system. The bracelet is very easy to use, however my negative would be that it doesn't have the glide lock system. After I've had the Submariner, which admittedly I've become obsessed with the glide lock system, I feel like most Rolexes should have it even though this is one of the entry-level models. Now this watch, even though it's 34mm, the watch actually wears like a dream. It's very comfortable and the watch actually wears a lot larger than the 34mm. In fact, it wears similar to a vintage 36mm Datejust, or dare I say very close to a 37mm Seiko Sarb 033. This watch could easily be dressed up with a suit or dressed down with some casual joggers and a t-shirt. Actually, when thinking about it, the entire Oyster Perpetual line could be your one and only watch. You could dress it up, dress it down, and honestly, there's nothing you can't do with it. Overall, I would recommend this to anyone who could sport the size. In fact, I highly recommend the modern OP line in general. Whatever size fits your wrist, the specs are up there with the rest of them. After all, it is a Rolex. In fact, the only reason they're probably easier to get than the Rolex GMT or the Submariner is because we live in a world that sports watches are more in demand than dressier watches, even though this one, in my opinion, is actually a sports watch. And just because they're easier to get doesn't make them any lesser of a watch. Perhaps lesser in price, but not in quality. Now, in the end of every episode, I'm going to be answering a question from one of you guys, as I do with every episode moving forward. Now, before I post any review, I'm going to have a post and I'm going to be asking you guys what your question is. And today's question actually comes from Drawing Watches. First of all, thank you for the question, by the way. He asked, looking to get one for myself, would you say it could serve as a tool watch, up to rigorous hiking and swimming, etc.? Honestly, we live in a time where sports watches are in demand and we have an image of what they should be. Now, when thinking of sports watches, we always think of watches with bezels, chronographs, and so on. However, with this OP line, though it does not have the quote-unquote sports watch aesthetic, this watch is robust enough for any daily task, including being pushed into a pool by a not-so-funny friend. Weirdly specific, I know. Honestly, this watch actually feels as robust as my Submariner, and I wear that watch doing way worse than just hiking and swimming. The watch has 100-meter water resistance, so you can absolutely swim with it, and this watch is really tough, so you can go hiking with it. Even though it's only rated up to 100 meters water resistant, honestly, most people won't even be going that deep anyway. But guys, Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. And before every review, I'm going to be putting a post up so I could get your questions over there before I film, and hopefully I could answer your questions before I have the full review. But guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.